again everyone. It just popped into my head actually to perhaps take advantage while the BSA Gold Star is still here, because I finished working on that now. It's all done. Well, my part of the work it needed doing is done. I think the owner's got a few things he's going to do himself, but basically mechanically and as far as riding it goes, it's all good. So I'm done. Before he comes to get it, I thought it'd be a golden opportunity to line it up with our 350 Royal Enfield racer and just talk about a few things about both of them really. And because obviously the Gold Star was the Fireblade or the Hayabusa of its day, if you like, and they were very competitive machines back in their day, and you could get them in various forms, anything from trials through touring to obviously Clubman's racing and you know, full on out and out racing as well. Royal Enfield, they never really did anything like that with their 350 or 500 singles, and they really missed a trick as well, as I'll try and explain here in a moment. But the Gold Star, we've been out on that recently. We took a very enjoyable ride on it. Well, I enjoyed it anyway, of about 15 miles, and it sort of started playing on my mind a bit really, that I thought even though it went very well, it really thrived on being revved mercilessly almost, and there was no point at all, even in first gear, having it below 4,000 RPM. And thinking back to when I had the cylinder head and the barrel off, and obviously I saw the piston, the bore, the piston rings, everything were in excellent condition, but I remember thinking to myself that it didn't really look like a terribly high compression piston. And I think now, after having ridden it, that's probably the key. And I think that, at a guess, I haven't measured it, but I think that the compression ratio on that Gold Star as it stands is probably perhaps only in the region of 8 to 1. I doubt whether it'd be much more than that. And I think had it been perhaps around 10 to 1, then we would have seen quite a difference in how it performed. But the piston was in good clean condition and perfectly serviceable, and obviously I didn't know what the engine ran like before. I'd heard that it didn't have much compression and not a lot of power. I sorted out a head gasket problem, an exhaust valve problem, ground the valves in and everything, and it's as good as it could be really. But I think if it had a higher compression piston in it, it would be a hell of a lot more lively as well. And that also ties in with the cams and the valve timing. Now I don't know what cams that Gold Star's got in it, but what I can tell you is, without any doubt, the inlet cam has got a very long duration on it, and that says racing profile to me. I've seen it and got it on our own 350 Royal Enfield racer here. The inlet valve shuts very late indeed. So late that at low revs, when you're sort of blipping the throttle, when you open the throttle, you'll see a puff, a cloud of like foggy fuel vapour will come out the carburettor bell mouth. And that's because the inlet valve isn't shutting until the piston is well on its way up towards top dead centre on the compression stroke. It's certainly probably at or around its mid-stroke position coming up before the inlet valve shuts. So you get a little bit blown back out until you get some revs on and the way that the harmonics between the valves and the exhaust and everything work, and then it doesn't actually blow it out anymore. It does actually go in, or the vast majority of it does. So anyway, we've got a very long inlet timing with a late closing moment on the Gold Star, and I know I've deliberately got that on the 350 Enfield racer. But the difference with the 350 Enfield racer is it's got a compression ratio of about 13.5 or 14 to 1. Now admittedly it runs on methanol. If I wanted to run it on petrol, I'd probably have it between about 12 and 13 to 1, and it will do that on petrol. Thanks to the late inlet closing, you don't actually get so much cylinder pressure on the upstroke coming up on the compression stroke as you would if you had a touring cam in it that perhaps closed the valve not long after bottom dead center, and that is when you get the dreaded pinking and detonation and all sorts of stuff. But with a long late inlet timing, a lot of that is wiped out and you haven't got to worry too much about pinking. You need your mixtures set up right and your timings, of course. But anyway, that got me thinking about the cams that might be in that Gold Star. And whenever I've tuned 350 Enfields, probably this one excepted, because this is rather special. It's actually a short stroked 500. We shorten the stroke of a 500 down until we hit 350. So it's actually got a minuscule stroke, this one, and it can rev. We've got a rev limiter on it, stopping it going beyond 9,500 actually, just to avoid mechanical damage. Because it will go well beyond 9.5 and it will damage itself otherwise. But the power production has fallen off a cliff by 9.5 anyway, so we're happy with that. But the cams, usually when I tune standard stroke 350 bullets, I will use different cams in a 350 to what I might use in a 500, because 500 cams kill a 350. And I think we might have a little bit of that going on with the Goldie, because interestingly enough, I started looking at parts books that I could find online, and much to my surprise, the cams listed for this 1954-55 CB32 Gold Star, the 350, the cams, inlet and exhaust, had the same part numbers as those listed for the equivalent 500. I thought that we might have something with a slightly shorter duration or slightly less lift or something, but no, they are the same. So that says to me you really want the compression ratio as high as you can get, or as high as you can get away with. We haven't got that. I know that is only around about 8:1, so that could be transformed either by fitting a higher compression piston, or, and this may sound counterproductive, but trust me, it wouldn't be, some milder cams, or a milder inlet cam at least. But I think there's plenty more potential in that Gold Star than we saw when we took it out on the road. Even though it was enjoyable, it was fun, it revved, it run really smoothly, and it really wanted to be revved. But I think there would be a lot more power and speed still to come with a slightly higher compression ratio in that one, as we have in this. Now, I've got plenty of footage of this machine on YouTube, both in the workshop, on the dyno, and even on the racetrack. And this machine, let's get that off there, that's the prop stand. This machine has won races, it's won a championship, and it's set and holds a lap record on Anglesey, which it took off an AJS 7R, which set the lap record in 2009, I think it was. My brother Ian, riding this in a race, broke that record 3 times in that one race, so he now holds the record. He came, I think, second place overall. There were a few categories running, but first in his own class. And because of the other categories running, there were lots of Honda K4s and Ducati 350s and 250s behind him when he crossed the line to take his win and the championship for 2018 in the British Historic Racing on Anglesey. So this thing can fly, definitely. And this is where we come to Royal Enfield missing a trick back in the day, because Royal Enfield never produced anything like this, but they so easily could have done. The rolling chassis is 250 Crusader, Continental GT, and because of the rules and regulations, even the hubs and the brakes are factory items. We went from a 4-speed Albion gearbox, which was hopeless. He might as well have been dragging an anvil around behind him when we had that thing on. So we upgraded. We went to one of the few things that I really think are excellent things that came from the Indian Enfield factory, in the shape of the 5-speed gearbox that they produced in the early 2000s and onwards for a short while. But we started doing well and winning races, and we got disqualified from the championships. We could still race, but he had to start at the back of the grid and he couldn't claim any championship points. But I remember him going off the line at Cadwell Park one year, and he was the last one, right at the back of about 35 or 40 bikes. There were a lot of them then. He was back, we couldn't see him, he was behind the trees on the start line. They dropped the flag, the bikes revved up and took off. All the bikes moved away, one bike shot through and ended up, he was the first one up the hill. That was this one. So this could have been dynamite if Royal Enfield had thought of this, or maybe they did and decided not to. If they'd taken a 500 Fury engine, because we got the big head on it as well, with the big valves and the 1.5 inch port and the GP carburettor. But Royal Enfield could have done this. They could have short stroked a Fury down to 350 like we did. It's arguable whether they could have come up with a 5-speed gearbox. They did have a 5-speed gearbox on the Super 5s and the Continental GTs, and even their GP5 2-stroke 250 single racer. So they were certainly aware of and making 5-speed gearboxes round about then. So they could have had a 5-speed 350 as compact and light as a 250, with very nearly the power of their 500 Fury, capable of 9,500 RPM with 5 gears, to say to BSA, come on then, bring your Gold Star. Stick it on the circuit and let's go head to head. That never happened, but Royal Enfield had the makings, whether they knew it or not, of having something that could have really wiped the floor with that. Now the Gold Star was a very highly regarded machine in its day, very competitive, but there's no way one of those would get anywhere near this. And we've actually proved it on the racetrack, where, you know, that Gold Star there, to be fair to it, is pretty much as it would have been back in the day, on its 4-speed RRT2 gearbox, very high geared. It's like having a 6-speed gearbox with no first and second. But a lot of the BSA Gold Stars and even the Manx Nortons and the like that this machine has raced against have 5 or even 6 gears. This has only got 5, and it still managed to cross the line first from time to time. So a very, very potent little package there, and totally missed by Royal Enfield. But back to the Gold Star, that one there, we've been out on it, like I say. It is what it is. It's good fun, quick little bike when you wring its neck. But I think with the higher compression piston, that would be a far more capable machine than it is right now. It still wouldn't get near this one, but if it was my bike, I'm pretty sure I'd be looking for a 10-to-1 piston, maybe even 11-to-1 if possible. We'll get the compression ratio around about there, and that would really wake it up, because I know for a fact my father's 350 Royal Enfield Cafe Racer, which we haven't seen on video yet, I'll have to get round to doing that one, probably next spring perhaps. We'll get it out and get a run on it and talk about it. But that one, I tuned that one up, and I got the compression ratio to about 9, maybe 9.5 to 1, something like that. And we ended up with an 80 miles an hour 350 that still, it did 80, but it took quite a good while to get there. It had the clip-ons, it had the racing seat, it looked like it should do 100 standing still, but it was a little bit of a disappointment on the road. It was a much quicker bike than a standard Bullet, obviously, and I decided, what can we do with this, what can we do with this? I already had a Meteor Minor Sports piston in it, we had the R-cams in it, I'd ported the head. I thought, I'll take a couple of millimetres off the aluminium cylinder barrel. It was an Indian-made barrel that we got through Hitchcock's, and I later discovered, I didn't know at the time, that the Indian bikes and the Indian-made barrels, 350 and 500, their barrels tend to be a little bit taller, up to 2 millimetres taller in some cases, than the equivalent Redditch ones. But unbeknownst to me at the time, I took 2 millimetres off that cylinder barrel, shortened it, brought the cylinder head down closer to the piston. That stuck the compression ratio up to probably not far off 11-to-1. And boy oh boy did that wake that machine up. Since doing that, it's got a top speed of 90 miles an hour. If you decide that you want to do 80 miles an hour, you just open the throttle and it will do it, no problem. Overtaking, you can come up on something at 65 mile an hour, 70 maybe. You want to overtake it, you got room, just roll the throttle on and it'll accelerate past. You don't even have to use the gearbox. We did put a close ratio conversion into the gearbox of that one because it still runs the 4-speed Albion, which made a hell of a difference. But on the 5-speeders, that's not a worry anyway. But yeah, just all food for thought really, and the main reason I wanted to make this video was while we had the Gold Star there to take a look at and discuss and compare a little, and discuss some of the things that I might still do to that were it mine, is just look at what Royal Enfield could have had and what they could have done. Can you imagine if the BSA Gold Stars of the day at the time were getting hammered by Royal Enfield 350s on the racetrack in Clubman's racing? It so easily could have happened. Perhaps it nearly happened, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what decisions were made at management level. Perhaps somebody was aware of the potential that they had here in the compact 250 rolling chassis and the 350 bullet, or 500 bullet engine I should say, Fury engine version of it, short stroke down to 350, rather than the bore size decreased. What a potential, what a potent weapon they could have had, but they seem to miss it. But there we go, we've got two machines there, both made for very similar purposes. The BSA made for its purpose back in the day, and this one, I think I started gathering the bits and pieces together to make this as it was initially in 2004, 2005 as a classic race bike, and it's been a wonderful, very, very successful machine, which in the latter years far exceeded our expectations of it. It did start off as a tail end Charlie, mind, but with some development and continuous work, it ended up being a championship winning bike, which would just really leave something like that there completely and utterly lagging behind. And in fact, I think on one occasion it actually, this machine actually lapped the Gold Star at Croft years ago. It was a wet weather race. I don't think the guy on the Goldie felt quite as confident as my brother Ian felt on this, but what a fantastic bike. The Gold Star is a fantastic bike in its day, and very desirable and collectible now, but and they can be tuned up as well, of course, to go very, very quickly indeed. But Royal Enfield, where were you? Look what you could have done. Oh well, happy Christmas.